King Władysław Vasa in Vilnius.
Yo, I'm having a party this weekend. Come over. Vlad promised to come too. Are you coming? You should. Because this Vlad is none other than the King of Poland and Grand Duke of Lithuania, Władysław Vasa. The king resided half the year in Vilnius in 1636 and surely attended more than one party. Historians say that this was the happiest time in Vilnius in the entire 17th century. The city was virtually reborn. The ceremony to greet the king was incredible enough. Decorated streets full of hundreds of city dwellers, all dressed in their finest clothing, the sound of resounding speeches and the sight of luxurious gifts being offered. The ruler was accompanied by several thousand people, family members, courtiers, servants, and many others. It was a huge crowd, considering that Vilnius only had some 20,000 inhabitants at the time. Merchants and craftsmen were beside themselves. After all, such visitors would need food and drink. The ladies would require dresses and jewelry, and the lords fine suits and shoes. Horses would need feeding and carriages new wheels. There would be plenty of work for all. But not everyone was happy. Some of the ruler's entourage settled into nearly 400 homes belonging to Vilnius residents. They paid for the lodgings, of course, but it was still a burden. Imagine transforming your home into a hotel for 6 months with noisy guests and flowing alcohol. Władysław Vasa also liked wine and entertainment. He'd sometimes spend the entire day making social visits or take off on a hunt for several days. One such hunt was immortalized in the diary of a Lithuanian nobleman. The king promised revenge against all bears and shot 7 of them in just 2 days. For 6 months, Vilnius became the unofficial capital of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Władysław Vasa went about his usual business, meeting with foreign dignitaries and publishing all kinds of decrees. Even the most enlightened citizens were impressed with the ruler's command of the Latin language, and the king sometimes even displayed a deep sense of piety. Before Easter, for example, on Good Friday, he paid a visit to 7 churches in Vilnius, all on foot.
In early July, the king visited Vilnius University's Church of St. John's to congratulate the poet Maciej Kazimierz Sobiewski on becoming a Doctor of Theology. Sobiewski was a star on the European cultural map. To the sound of 4 choirs, the king presented the poet with a sapphire ring.
As summer neared its end, Władysław Vasa walked through the old town to Vilnius Cathedral, followed by an impressive procession. The city streets were beautifully decorated and 6 triumphant arcs were raised along the streets. The celebration was dedicated to the transfer of the remains of St. Casimir to a beautifully ornamented Baroque chapel in Vilnius Cathedral. Lithuanian music history, meanwhile, was given a gift of sorts by Władysław Vasa. Libretto di Helena, The Abduction of Helen, the first opera to be staged in Lithuania. Its libretto was authored by the king's secretary, Virgilio Pucciatelli, accompanied by music written by Italian composer Marco Scacchi. The opera premiered at the Palace of the Grand Dukes in Vilnius. It lasted 5 hours and sets were changed several times, from a desert to a grand palace to a garden with flowing fountains and finally a sea complete with boats. Władysław Vasa, like the others attending the premiere, was enchanted. The king departed several days later. As they saw him off, the people of Vilnius could not know that just 19 years later, their city would be burnt and destroyed by the army of the Tsar in Moscow, the start of what would have become known as the Deluge. For the moment though, Vilnius is happy as years continued.